all that I keep yawning.
Nah, you good. Yo, you good. What is going on, everybody? It's your man, Jay Immanuel, and we are back with a new episode of Why We Succeed. Today, I am joined by three very lovely ladies. One, a returning guest, my girl, Sarah, and I'm also joined by two first-time guests on the podcast, Teri and Nicole. How are you ladies doing today?
Great.
I'm wonderful.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. So I'll go from top to bottom. So Sarah, how are you doing today? Let the people know a little bit about you and your second time around here on the show.
Yeah, this is a very under-caffeinated day for me, y'all. I'm only like one coffee in, but I'm doing great. So if we haven't met yet, if you didn't see my podcast episode originally, I'm actually a certified Notion consultant. I'm one of 54 in the world. I'm 10th in the US. And so I run a consulting agency and community strictly focusing on helping people work better online. So I do a lot of tech productivity, a lot of tough love, as I say, right? Because, you really can't scale your business unless you are, unbiased and really hard on yourself sometimes. So that's what I do. And I have a community of people who are really focused on, how can I automate, streamline, and just make things easier? Not necessarily to add on more streams or do other things, but just to really allow them to focus on client experience, not necessarily trying to get every single task done manually every single time. So that's what I do. And I'm based in Austin, in case anyone's local.
Oh yeah, yo, so happy to have you back on the show, Sarah. Nicole, your first time on the show. Let our viewers know a little bit about you.
Well, I am a digital brand and content creator and manager and coach and strategist. So I help small businesses, small creators really stand out with content to increase their visibility. For example, I'm really known for my aesthetic and my content that actually is very relatable and actually builds a community of people. So you don't have to build a huge following. You're just building a strong community so that you're able to convert into sales and you're able to have an alignment with your brand without all the extraness. Literally, it's a streamline strategy that I use. I just use it based off of the person that you are, your interests, and then we build out a bomb strategy for you to be able to reach your customers and connect with them.
Oh yeah, all y'all ladies are crushing it. Terry, last but definitely not least, let everybody know a little bit about you.
I'm Teri, and I was previously the founder of Lively. So we were a platform for creators to start vibrant communities, which sold to Kajabi, a $2 billion company. I've raised over 2.5 million funding. The company's been featured on Forbes, TechCrunch, Apple, and we received 5 M&A offers before exiting. Now I'm the director of product for communities at Kajabi. Previously was early growth PM, product manager at Asana and Microsoft. And I now write for Forbes Business Council on how to build strong online communities.
Oh man, yo, we got three
That's
powerhouse
amazing.
ladies on the show today. Yo, this is gonna be fun. We're diving into how to launch a successful and profitable online community. And I want to come back over to you, Terry. Do you think that most coaches and most content creators know how to launch a successful, profitable community?
Today, unfortunately, most people do not know how to start a community quite yet, but I believe everyone has the potential to. As long as you have an engaged audience, even if that means, one person, 2 people, like you can start incrementally and build upwards. Building a community that you can not only have for future upsell streams, but also potentially like premium gated communities like masterminds or coaching groups. All those are still very useful monetization tools that I've seen creators make, killing from.
Yeah. And coming over to you, Nicole, I'm curious, what do you think are the main differences between somebody just amassing a large social media following versus actually building an online community?
Okay, so the difference between building like a big following, I just made a post about this. I always tell people, what is your end goal? Like you can have like a lot of followers, but it means nothing if you're looking for a long-term goal to actually monetize that community. So the difference between that, you might see some people just posting pictures or they're just posting their lifestyle. Those are people that just want you to basically, I'm like down to earth, be them. And versus a community where you're actually reaching out, you're actually asking questions, you're asking them what are their struggles, and then providing the solution with value through your content. That is the difference from an influencer that just posts pictures about, okay, I'm on this yacht, I'm doing this, versus people that are actually doing the work inside of their community and actually getting to know your audience, getting to know their pain points. Because once you find that sweet spot, just like you said, you can create coaching programs. Like Teri said, coaching programs. I've done it all. Coaching programs, communities, memberships. It comes effortlessly when you actually put in the work to actually get to know your community and what they actually need from you.
Oh man, good point. Sarah, anything that you would add to that? Any other differences that you've noticed between amassing a huge following on social media versus actually building a community?
Yeah, so I don't have a big following on social media. And I think I've been really strategic about that, right? Because I've always come with the mindset of if I can't spend 10 minutes talking to every single person in my audience, then I have too big of an audience, right? Like if I have to put my time behind a paywall, I'm not doing my audience justice, right? To really build those relationships. And I think something, that we've already touched on is data. And that, I think as creators, you're an artist and you're like, I don't want to be put in this box and I don't want to look at numbers. And that's not why I started this. But, the communities I've started, I've done 2 so far, technically 3, I guess. But the biggest thing is really listening to your community and what they need from you. Right.
Yeah.
And so for me, my first community I started because I kept hearing, especially from women in this space, that they didn't want that emotional hand holding. And, they didn't want to feel like they were consistently having smoke blown up them just because they're women, right? Like this feeling of, oh my God, I have to support you. And like some people just want like the hard information. They don't want to just feel like they're just a number in a group because of a marginalized space. And so I think, hearing those things, I was like, well, I'm kind of an asshole. I can create this space if you want, like, that's fine, and so it really comes down to listening. And, we just shifted my community too, specifically because I kept hearing from people in my audience, I need people to beta test my systems. I need somebody who can just put eyes on it and tell me honestly, like, does this suck? What's wrong with it? And so we've completely shifted our community to really hone in on that problem and that solution. And I think that's what makes successful communities, not just a place to talk, not just a place to like post a comment, but genuinely solving a problem is what's going to make a community successful.
Yeah. And Teri, with that in mind, what would you say have been some of the often overlooked challenges that come along with building a profitable online community?
Yeah, so a lot of the community launch, there's a lead time that comes up to it that many different strategies will help, ensure the success of it. So something we've seen that's been really awesome is like teasing things out in advance, posting consistently prior up to the launch, as well as different elements of like social proof, where you maybe do a poll on IG and you ask like, what should this community be called? Or what should like the price point be? Or what kind of benefits would you want from this community? And kind of having that be an interactive experience that you can leverage in like future teasing of the community as well. And then also things like exclusivity really matters to just human nature, and also just members being able to like have exclusive experiences with you, learn from others. Maybe you do like happy hours, maybe you do like study sessions, whatever that may be. But something fun and exclusive for your members often is something quite enticing. And then also other things like just having like very visual collateral that people can view and like interact with, I think helps to draw a lot of like attention for launching. But so many different other tactics that can work when you actually have the community launched as well. So whether that's like seeding engagement or just being very active in the community and nominating ambassadors to be leaders in the community so they feel ownership, so that other community members feel a sense of, belonging. So all those things are generally things that make communities successful.
Yeah, that's good. And Nicole, in your personal experience, what are some of the challenges that you face building your communities that you didn't expect from the onset?
Some of the challenges I faced was actually listening to your audience. Like a lot of people go into the online space like, I want to do this, I want to do that, and
Hmm.
they're not understanding. And I always tell people, if you don't have a TikTok, get on a TikTok, because TikTok allowed me to understand marketing on a different level when I first started in 2019. And people was like, oh, how are people building their following? How are people building their following? It's because they found their sweet spot. And when you're going on TikTok, and I'm just giving some quick gems for whoever's listening, go on TikTok, and right, you're like, okay, I love this creator. You find a video, then you go to their profile, right? And then you're going to their profile and you're trying to understand, and they don't have any of the type of videos that you just watch. It could have been like this mom and their kid. And then the kid was just so funny, right? So now you're looking for more videos with the mom and the kid, but you go to the profile and you don't see any. So I tell people, once you figure out your sweet spot, that's the challenge. That's literally the challenge, to figure out like, okay, what does my audience really want to see from me? And that's a hard pill to swallow when you're starting your brand, building your community, because you have your own vision and mission. But if you just take the time to listen, like we talked about earlier, so listening to them, and figuring out what actually they need to solve their problems, like you're going to be in a great spot to building your community online.
Oh man, that is a gem right there. And I tell you, that's probably one of the more valuable lessons that I learned last year is how important it is to focus on giving your clients, your audience what they want. I feel like that's some of the things that I always have to talk about when I'm with my podcast coaching clients and they have ideas for their podcast and they're talking about all of these episodes, but then when you're telling me who's listening to the show, there's a disconnect. I'm like, do your audience even care about that? Or is it your personal preference? And I can speak from experience. When I launched my podcast, the first year, I mapped out a whole year worth of topics, but it was all based on what I thought people wanted to hear. And it wasn't until I learned, like, nah, I have to give them what they want. And like you mentioned, Nicole, the more you give people what they want and they come over to your channel or they come into your community, and it's filled with just that, you may think that it's redundant. Like I'm always talking about the same thing, or I'm always, doing videos on this topic. But if that's what people want, they're not going to get sick of it. And they actually will appreciate you continuing to talk more and more about it. So that was a really great point. Sarah, I'm curious. You mentioned that you've launched 2, technically 3 communities. What would you say have been some of the challenges that you didn't necessarily expect?
Yeah. So I think our biggest issue. So I've been running community since 2018. I started on Facebook, like many of us have. And that was our biggest piece of data is people are like, I'm just not going on Facebook anymore. And so I keep missing, your content, or I'm missing these lives, because I used to go live once a week and, talk about different business things. And so I ended up moving to Circle, which has had its own challenges. And it's actually funny, Terry, because I was at South by 2 weeks ago and Kajabi had a
Me too.
full, yeah,
Yeah.
and they had like a full setup and they were talking to me about Lively, right? And I was like, I don't know about Kajabi, like whatever. I was first 1,000 people on Circle, and I'm kind of at this place where it's like, what does my community need right now that we can kind of wait on the features, wait on that roadmap to really get them. But Circle's been a learning curve because now people have to log in, and if they don't have email notifications, they have no clue what's going on in the group. And so that's been our biggest challenge of engagement. And I think, Terry, something that you brought up that I wanted to kind of circle back to is it's not just about what are people expecting of us as community leaders, but what is their expectations coming into this group, right? So I'm in Jay Klaus's The Lab, Creator Science The Lab, and I specifically joined his community. It's capped at 200 people, and he was very intentional on like, this is what I'm bringing to the table, but this is what you are expected to bring to the table. Because when you really make those expectations clear, I feel like the community gets 10 times better. And so when we shifted recently, we changed the name and, kind of what we're offering. I went to my group and I said, hey, like, this is how we're shifting. If you can't contribute to that or you don't feel prepared for that, like, it's okay if you exit. That is 100% okay. I will not hold that to you. And so holding those expectations have, I think, really helped us navigate the more software headaches and made those a little less of a pain point, if you will.
And Sarah,
Yeah.
are you a Kajabi customer, or are you using something
So
else?
it's interesting because before I became a Notion consultant, I actually owned a design agency for 4.5 years. And I used to build courses for clients on Kajabi. And then, so I was doing Kajabi for clients, but personally, what did I do? I did MemberSpace. I tried MemberSpace with Squarespace. Then I went to Mighty Networks. Hated the UI at Mighty
Oh my
Networks.
gosh, I
I
Mighty
hated
Networks
it.
is a up and down. I have Mighty Networks.
Why
Oh my
did you
God.
hate
UI
it?
is so important. Like it was so clunky, I feel like,
Yeah.
and then I don't know who told me about Circle. So I was like, okay, but it's so funny because my first course community I built on Trello. That was my first thing I ever did. And I like did a whole YouTube. People were like, I didn't know you could do this on Trello. I'm like, all you need is a locked wall and like give access using
Yeah.
Zapier. It doesn't matter. But yeah, and now I'm starting a plant community with one of my friends. I have over 200 houseplants, y'all. And we're doing that on Geneva just to have a place to like share photos and chat. So it's really interesting to have like a super in-depth community and then kind of backtrack a little bit on like the features. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, the one thing that we've really focused on as we built communities for Kajabi now is really making sure your community is engaged, because that's something that we've repeatedly heard has been a problem on other platforms. And so making sure your community has touch points with not only you, but each other, like that it scales beyond just you as like always having to prop up the community is something that we focused a lot on. And I think we've gotten really great response for. So I think that's mainly the standout like benefit to Kajabi communities over other community platforms you'll see out there. But I'd love to hear that you've explored so many different options. So well-rounded experience.
Yeah. Well, I think that brings it back to, if you're thinking about starting a community, what's your budget for it, right? Because, everything is so expensive. And like, every software has their perks and their reasoning for pricing. Full transparency, that's a big reason why I won't go over to Kajabi, because it's just not in our budget as a company if we're not currently charging for the community to make up that difference, right? And so if you're doing courses, makes total sense. But for us, we're doing a free discussion group right now. We're not charging for it. And so that's been a huge pain point for us too, is like, how can we not lose money on this until we know for a fact that it's going to be worthwhile as a business model and as a stream of income, So, and for us with Circle, so I have Notion templates. I sell plug and play subscription that pays for Circle. So it's like, okay, I can just add on all these other things and beta test a community because my templates pay for it at the moment, but I've seen people run communities on Slack. I've seen them on everywhere. You can turn any software into a community, y'all. Like you don't have to have a massive budget.
Instagram has a new feature now too.
Yeah.
Oh yes, sure. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Nah, that's good. I want to come over to you really quickly, Nicole, because one of the key things that we're talking about is not only just building communities, but communities that are profitable. So what would you say are some of the key ingredients to actually attracting buyers or future clients into your community?
I'll give 2 strategies that I've used in the past for my community. The first is giving a ton of value. A lot of people want to get out there and charge, but if you don't have the credibility, if you don't have that trust, if people don't have like an insight to who you are as a person, coming from a small creator, a small business owner, that is a key factor that I say that you need to have building your community. And then can you repeat the question? I lost track of my last.
Yeah, most definitely. So the question was, what are the key ingredients to build a community that attracts either future clients or paying customers?
Okay, yeah. So value, content. As you guys know, like you're gonna be your content bestie. Content is going to be the best way and the best, least cost effective. Of course you can run ads if you have the budget, but if you're someone that's starting out, you need to just put out free content, get in people's DMs, all right? Give out the juicy stuff that people actually want to know. That's one thing that I'm currently doing with my audience now. I'm like, oh, like I feel like I've given like, everything. And they're like, we just want more of you. We want the behind the scenes. We want to see what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So I just say give, pour. And then as Terry said before, like one thing that I did to promote my community. And you guys are encouraging me to actually put it back out there now because I was like, I'm like, I didn't know. But she
Community
was
is
saying
so
like
powerful in
having
so
like
many.
Yeah.
yes, like having like a teaser, like you have to tease people like, okay, something big is coming. And then let people know that it is going to be a paid program, and you have to add incentives. So people can feel like they're getting value out the program and not just, talking to a bunch of people that they can relate to.
Nah, that's
Yeah,
good.
and something that I've seen a lot with creators,
Mhm.
a lot of people want to, create content because they genuinely have value to give to the world. They want to be themselves and kind of help people out there. But there's oftentimes a fear that I've heard where people are unsure, can I really sell something? Should I be trying to monetize?
Yeah.
And I always tell creators, you are valuable. You are someone that deserves to not only, put out content and make a living, but also just, be able to run with the initiatives that you want to run with. And I always tell creators just not to worry about that.
Yeah.
As long as you're providing value to the world in some way, shape, or form, like there will always be haters, there will always be criticizers, no matter what you do. And I just always want to make sure every creator feels empowered to be able to go after that kind of initiative.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's so important. I mean, I think we live in such a world now where every single thing has to be monetized the second we think of the idea, right? And if you're super passionate, I mean, that's how I started my Notion career, right? I posted a video about how I'm using Notion to run my design business. That's literally how I started. And it was just a hobby. It was like, hey, I just want to show you this really cool thing that I made and like leave it at that. And that literally just triggered everything else following. And people reached out and said, hey, I want to work with you. I want to do this. And so I think that's literally the key is if you care enough about something, if you feel like you have enough to say about it, just do it. Don't think about, oh my God, how am I going to take invoices? How am I going to pay this? How am I going to just post it? Like, just post and go. And I think, Nicole, something you talked about too, that we're in this cycle now as well, is like, there's so much content out there, right? And so your audience is literally not going to remember if you posted something 90 days ago. And so if you feel like, oh my God, I'm tapped out, I have nothing else to give, just recreate the graphic and repost it. Like no one cares.
Repurpose.
You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter, right? But like in terms of, getting new eyes on stuff, like you can repurpose, and like no one's going to notice,
Yeah.
So
That's a good point. Terry, coming back over to you, what challenges have you personally faced with getting people to buy into your community and more specifically, people who will be paying customers or clients?
Yeah, so the community market is a fairly saturated place where there are a lot of options, as we talked about here. So just helping people realize kind of like the importance of the engagement piece that happens within the communities is a big part of my just educating like different creators, coaches, because you being part of that community is definitely a huge reason why people are there. But having a peer-to-peer way for people to not only like help each other and keep each other accountable and grow and learn together is a huge value add that most people are missing in their lives. And so just ensuring people understand the importance of that element. Like you could have the perfect community platform with all the features that you want. It's branded exactly the way that you want. But then if no one's using it, is it really that valuable?
Yeah.
So just something to always think about.
No, that's good. And Nicole, kind of piggybacking off of that, right? When Terry was talking about how there is a, seemingly oversaturation when it comes to, a lot of different communities. What do you think people can do to distinguish themselves, make their community unique? What would you say are some things that people should consider?
Their personality. I tell people all the
Yeah.
time, like when you're building a brand, like if you are your authentic self, people are going to naturally gravitate towards you. And I tell people all the time, people buy people. They don't just buy
Mhm.
because someone else has the same exact service. So
Yeah.
in order for you to stand out, just be yourself. I tell people that all the time. Like, I know you probably saw like some of my content. Like I'm a very funny and goofy person, but when people they look at me, they're like, oh, I'm like, but I know my stuff. So like when it
Yeah.
comes down to it, like I like to be able to be very funny, goofy, relaxed, but at the end of the day, I love to get work done. People always talk about my work ethic. People always talk about my branding, how it's so cohesive. So I just literally pour into myself and then people will pour right back into you. And the end of the day, be yourself.
Yeah.
That's how you're going to attract your tribe.
I
Nicole,
absolutely
I'm
love that.
curious, you have different sense of selves, or you have a different part of you for like work versus social life versus, maybe family life or something. How do you reconcile those?
I say this is so since I've been like when I first started, I just believe strongly in building like a personal brand and this is the time to do it. Like this is the time where you're still able to, put on the suit and, switch it up and still be yourself. Like in my content, when I introduce myself, I always say like these are some things I love about these are some things that you need to know. Like I'm funny, I like champagne, and I like French fries. So therefore, like I have those. So in my content, you're going to see maybe a wine glass. You're going to see me maybe going out. I love to go out to dinner, and me incorporating all of that. And I love to travel. You just have to be unapologetically you. Like you know your stuff. You're the expert. So I always tell people have that confidence because that's one thing I had to know. I felt like when I first started, I had to wear like a suit or I had to look a certain way or talk a certain way, and that honestly wasn't the case. So I tell people add all that in, add it into your content pillars, like slide them in there here and there, and then people are going to be like. People are like, oh, what are you now? I started posting my coffee drinks, like just a part of like my story. People kept asking me, what coffee are you drinking? I'm like, just trying
Doesn't that
to
like fill your cup? I'm like, let me tell you all about my coffee order. I live for that conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then they turn into paying customers. So just you testing the waters and trial and error, like will take you further than you are expecting.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah, it's
man.
really so
Advice when it comes
interesting.
to- oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Terry, you froze on my side. What did you say?
No worries. I was just going to say, I have the same advice when it comes to just building a business, which is everything is about just taking little steps, even if you're unsure. I think a lot of people get paralyzed and don't move forward just because they don't want to do something wrong or not have a strategy. And a lot of times the best strategy is just trial and error, as you said, Nicole, and seeing what works, learning, failing fast to succeed. So love all that you said.
Yes.
No, that's good. What were you about to share, Sarah?
I was going to say, I don't know if y'all know who Erin on Demand is on YouTube.
Yep.
I'm obsessed with her, like obsessed. I'm like, I want to be your best friend. Like, please let me buy you dinner. But she actually has, Nicole, what you were talking about. She put a like a term to it recently called content layering, where you basically introduce like 4 pieces of yourself, whether it's business, coffee, plants, like whatever, and you layer your content in a way that doesn't burn you out from consistently talking about the same thing. And so it's like one night you might post about champagne, the next night you're going to post about, I don't know, branding or whatever. And so that way she kind of explained it in the way that like it keeps your audience on their toes and don't, necessarily know exactly what you're coming up with next. But if they go back and look at your grid or your feed or your YouTube channel, they're going to see this like consistent wave of things. And I thought it was so brilliant, because that's something that I really struggled with for a while is, you know, how do I talk about my plants or talk about the fact that I am very proudly child free and all I have is a dog. And then it's like, you know, then we bought property, and then it's like, how do you layer all these things? And again, it's setting that expectation, putting it in your bio, right? Like on this channel, you're going to hear about food, productivity, and plants. And like, if that's not for you, well, sorry.
Yeah.
And that's how you have to do it. I think that's the downfall of a lot of people with content, is they think they can only talk about one thing.
Mhm.
And if they don't, it's going to like totally turn their audience off. But the biggest thing is like, Teri, you were talking about it too, is like being open to tell your audience, like, I don't fucking know everything. Like, I'm learning just like you, you know? And so if I make a mistake, or if I'm more open to say, hey, I'm trying to do better at this, I think it also gives your audience a sense of purpose, that they're there to also support you as well. And that's super, super important for community building.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
man.
that's something that's so successful. It's just also the vulnerability that I'm hearing both of you share. Just being true to who you are in a way that's like not at all hiding at your, you know, feelings, your fears, your needs that you have. And I think that's just such a way to build a true relationship with your fans and audience.
Yeah. And I just wanted to reiterate the point that Nicole made, like for our viewers, definitely keep what she said in mind, because it's so true. I was literally just yesterday talking to my accountability partner about the fact that, like you mentioned, Nicole, people buy people. Like there are so many people that offer the same service, but when you look at what distinguishes one person from another, it's whether or not you like that person, whether you vibe with them. Like you just gave as an example, Sarah, with Erin on Demand. I'm sure there's other people that do exactly what she does, but it doesn't resonate the same way, because Erin is uniquely herself. And when you're uniquely yourself, like you mentioned, Nicole, sharing the weird little things, the quirky little things about us, sometimes people get too fearful of doing that. And that's something else that you had touched on as well, Teri, is like the fears that people have around monetizing. And another fear that people have is about jumping outside of their box or sharing things outside of what is just supposed to be, you know, just business or whatever that specific niche they're in. You know, I think that's another one of those things that kind of handicapped a lot of content creators, is when people started hammering in years ago, like you need to niche down, you need to be niching down. And like now you look at it, everybody's talking about you need to broaden it or just totally get rid of niches altogether. And you know, it kind of goes right in line with what you guys are saying.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
So
admittedly, I have the fear of the second bucket that you were talking about, of like going out of your box and being a different, truly who you are. I think the business side of me has always been taught to be, you know, like more of an executive presence and, you know, speak very professionally. And I think social me is totally different, where, you know, I'm very personable. I love to like, you know, have fun, be goofy, all that stuff. And so that's why I asked you the question, Nicole, because I actually don't know how to reconcile the two sides of me. And
that's what I do. That's exactly what I do.
She's like, hire me.
No, seriously, I was like, just listening to like your story, I was like, okay, like I want to talk to her, like, you know, because like, you know, this, like, you always can learn more and more from everyone. I'm like, so yeah, that's literally what I do. I tell people like, just to like, I'm like, it's easier than you think. I tell people all the time, like, it's easier than you think. And once you have the steps, once you have the blueprint, you're gonna be like, were you literally just doing this? I'm like, yeah, I'd say it all the time. Like people are like, how did you do? I'm like, I literally just do this. Just trust me. I'm telling you, like, you're gonna be fine. Especially once you already have the hard part for people, I feel like, is getting the experience, you know, being the expert or something, and you already had that. So tell people like, I know how to run a community, I know how to build a platform, you know, that's something you already know. Now you're just like, okay, yeah, I like bringing my dog on the weekends, like y'all gonna see my dog, like you're like, you like plants, you know. And now you got people that already are like, because there's a big niche, we're plant lovers, so do not
I know
do not hold back on that.
That is like, one community I'm like, I am not ready to pretend to be an expert on. I have all the everything in my apartment is here, but there are people that can do that way better than me. I think Teri too, like, you know, just being a business owner myself and, you know, feeling in a weird space that there is not enough representation in the sense of exit strategies and planning and really breaking through 7-8 figures, right? There's very few women that have done that, right? And I think it would be so inspiring. And of course, like, I don't know what you're doing right now, because we just met today, but, you know, doing content on that of like, hey, like, I started here with this dream, and this is how my kind of steps in my progression came, and really aligning your content to be like, yeah, I fucking closed my laptop down at 5 p.m., but I was still able to create an exit strategy and sell my business. And I think that kind of stuff is so needed for us, especially as people, women, LGBTQ, that are in this space of like, I didn't realize I could sell my company. I didn't realize that like I could do these things. Like, I don't know if y'all know who Christina Scalera is. She owned the contract shop, multi-million selling contract templates. That is her thing. She started, she's a lawyer, whatever. She just sold her business, was undisclosed how much she sold it for, but she bought like a third property, like a third house. And so it's like, clearly you're making money, but it's, you know, and now she's turned her business model into coaching people on how to do that. And so I think it's really fascinating to see kind of behind the scenes and not being afraid to like, and I don't even want to say like brushing our ego, right? But like putting that, taking that curtain down and saying, hey, like, no, this is actually way more attainable than a lot of the dudes in our space are pretending that it is. Like, if I hear one more thing about Micro Acquire or Morning Brew, like, I don't care about those people. Like, I want people who are like chill like me that, you know, are on the more human side, you know. Sorry, I'm on like my soapbox. I'm so sorry.
No, you know that's always welcome over here, Sarah.
Yeah, but still, I mean, that's, I think, you know, the biggest part too is the vulnerability. You know, I think for me, and we talked about it, Jay, when I was on the podcast, is like, I didn't really have a community until I started talking about being a runaway and having a parent incarcerated, and, you know, how that shifted my mindset on life and different things. And like, I just spoke at this conference, and the amount of people that came up to me after that were like, you don't look like you went through that. And now I can realize I can be where you are because I saw somebody go through it. Yeah. Exactly. And that vulnerability is so important, but you have to be ready for that, right? Like the amount of therapy I went through, y'all, and now I'm here, but it's fine. You know?
That's real. That's real. Yeah. And what you shared, it really reminds me of something that I have to be completely honest about. For years, my mom used to be like, yo, you putting out all this content, you should tell your story, like the things that you've done in your journey. And like now I'm realizing how important that is. To your point, Sarah, oftentimes we focus so much on the business side, like you were mentioning, Teri, about like what my expertise is or how I can help people. But oftentimes people want to connect with you. They want to hear your story. And when you share it, you'd be surprised how much people resonate with it. And it opens those doors. So I just wanted to share that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even like, what are you listening to? I posted on my Instagram stories the other day. I'm obsessed with Kalani, y'all. Like, listen, my boyfriend knows I would leave him in a second if Kalani gave me the option. But I just posted like listening to the Kalani album, and I just like screenshotted it while I'm working on an ocean project. And people are like, oh my God, you love Kalani. I love this song. And it's like, it's like, it could really be that simple as just like screenshotting something on your phone, you know. It's just insane. And I think we all overthink our content sometimes. You know, we think it's not important enough.
Going to be, go ahead, Teri.
No, I was just saying overthinking is definitely a problem.
Yeah, storytelling, that's where you make the money, especially if you are like coaching in the coaching space. I have recently, so in December, I know you follow me, Immanuel. So like in December, I'm very transparent on my page because like that's what sparked my journey, because when I was trying to get into the online space, so many people were gatekeeping, and that was what sparked me to actually help a lot of other, you know, women and other people to actually build their brands, because I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, tell me, I'm willing to pay, I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to put the work in. So that's what I wanted to stand for in my community. So in December, I finally got back on YouTube, and then I had went through a breakup, but I had already film the videos of me talking about talking about my boyfriend in here. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to look stupid. And then I'm like, oh, like, I know I'm not mentally there for my community, and I'm very upfront with my community. I'm like, they're going to know something's off. So just sharing that, it helped so many people. Like, it helps so many people. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you
Yeah.
guys really like, it was just me because I didn't want to be fake. I didn't want to be not myself because like I'm a very bubbly and like fun person. So, and I wasn't fun, for a couple of weeks. So I had to let them know y'all not gonna see me 3 times. You're not gonna see this. But just showing them the crappy side of an entrepreneur, like that's what people, like you said, people want to be like, oh wow, like she doesn't have it put all together. I'm like, no,
Definitely not.
Never. Every day. What am I doing today? Who am I? Do I want to break this business down?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Teri, I want to come over to you really quickly here. Kind of going back to the profiting and the monetizing piece of the puzzle, right? So we know that as business owners, that's one of the goals. But when would you say is the right time for people to begin focusing on that? Is that something to do when you're planning the launch of a community, or is it something that you think about after the community is launched? What's your take?
I think any kind of experiment you can run early on will
Mhm.
give you better signal for success. I'm always about de-risking things because there's so many different ways to learn without having to invest a whole lot of time, a whole lot of money. So I would, maybe put up the IG polls as we discussed, maybe a landing
Mhm.
page, which is super simple to set up. You can do that on Squarespace, Webflow, Kajabi, like super easily, and just start to collect interest on, who would be interested without having to invest a whole lot of infrastructure, a whole lot of setup, a whole lot of your time and like emotions. And you can see kind of how the interest level changes based off of different messaging that you might release or different tactics or channels that you might try. So I definitely recommend like experimenting as much as possible because that will
Mhm.
give you, everyone's audience is so different, whether that's
Right.
demographic, size, like vertical. We've seen a lot of like personalities that are more like
Mhm.
entertaining
Mhm.
be a little bit, have like different monetization strategies than ones that are more inspirational, that have, interest or vertical that they represent. So just seeing what works for you with different
Mhm.
experimentation strategies is definitely something I recommend.
That's good. And Nicole, kind of coming over to you, right? Because you had mentioned before about the importance of providing value and putting content out there, giving it away, helping people out. But, kind of to that same point, the goal ultimately for business owners is to make money. So how do you personally distinguish between what you put behind the paywall and what you give away for free?
That's a very good question. That's something that I had was a challenge for me in the beginning
Hmm.
because my friends and family like you're giving too much away, but I'm like that's what you're supposed to do when you are trying to build credibility. So you start to tone it back. Like it's like basically I know you guys probably seen it all over Instagram, like having a hook. So you want to hook people in, and then you want to provide the more details. Like for example, some of my clients, my one-on-one coaching clients will go in for the TikTok account. Like I just gave that gem out for you guys. Like I'll tell people get on TikTok, start following the trends, see what's, that's the first basic thing. Go on the
Hmm.
For You page. This is the first thing to figure out what sounds are trending. Keep scrolling, and you're going to see the sounds pop up, pop up. Okay, that's a sound you want to use. But then I go into the details of giving them the actual strategy that I used to build my TikTok account and was like, okay, these people want this from me. All right. And TikTok is going to go. TikTok is going to give you that natural reach that Instagram won't really give you because at the end of the day, they're a business. They run advertisements. So they're not going to give you all that organic reach because at the end of the day, they want people to buy their ads and use that promotional for them as well. So I just tell people basically start leading it out, make carousels, say like, okay, give 3 pointers, 3 reasons you should be using content. 1, to get more visibility. 2, to get more credibility. 3, to build trust. And then you have the people that are like, okay, I still need more. Then you offer them at the end a call to action. All right, I'm having a masterclass. Okay, you can invest in one-on-one coaching. You can invest in me flying out to do your content. Then you start leading to people to get the more VIP services where you're actually really zoning in and looking at their brand and
Mhm.
personalizing the strategies that you use to fit them.
No, that's good. And Sarah, one of the things that's really important is getting people in the community and ultimately attracting them. What
Mhm.
lead strategies do you use to, pretty much make people aware of your community and what you're doing?
Yeah, so, I should also say, like, I don't have a big public following, but I have a big private following. And
Mm,
so I've really spent a lot of time on my email list. And so that's like primarily where I connect with people, and then I repurpose that publicly. So if you have committed to me, whether it's free or paid, like you get everything first before the general audience does. And so for me, the attraction originally was what is trending, right? Notion. If you are a creative and you're a designer, here's a community for that. It's super trendy, super sexy, right? But then as we've shifted, it's really attracting people who are already warm to me, literally
mhm,
saying, what do you need? How do I make this better? I actually send a survey to my email list every 90 days, like clockwork. It is pre-scheduled. It is the exact same survey every 90 days to catch new people, to say, how can I serve you better? And then from there, it's a follow-up and say, hey, based on what you said, we're adding this into the community. I noticed you're not there. You haven't been active. Here is this new thing, literally based on what you've said. And so that's a big piece for us. We are not trying to talk to everyone. We're trying to talk to a very specific person that feels like what they are getting from everywhere else doesn't match what they need. And so that's kind of what we focus on. And I think too, something Nicole said was, about the paywall. We really
mhm,
try to reach people who don't have a big budget for coaching. I'm very, very open about experiences I've had. I paid a business coach $17,000 in 2021, early 2022. It was the worst experience of my life. I can't
mm,
believe that I spent that amount of money. But for us and our audience, a lot of them come with that trauma of, I spent all this money on somebody. How do I know that this is going to be worthwhile for me? And so similarly, also to Nicole, I do a lot of free content. And so then my paid stuff is just further deepening what
mhm.
they've already gotten. And so I pre-build that trust with them. So then it's a no-brainer to convert. And that's how we do it. So.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And in case people aren't picking up on it, and Sarah, you already know from being a guest on the podcast before, one of the things that I always say is I truly
Mhm.
believe the true key to success is relationships. And
Yep.
one of the things that each of you have mentioned is how vital it is to build
Mhm.
relationship with your community. Each of you have provided different strategies of ways that people can do that. But if people don't take anything else away from it, if you want to launch
Mhm.
a successful and profitable community, you can't
Mhm.
ignore the relationship side of that piece of the
Mhm.
puzzle. But
Yep.
coming over to you, Teri, I would love to know, like, what lead strategies have you found to be the most effective when, making people aware of online communities? Would you say it's ads, social media platforms, sales pages? Like, what have you seen work?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of different tactics, and depends on your budget, depends on,
Hmm.
what kind of risks that you are willing to take. But, I've seen lots of creators use Facebook ads to prop up their community. It's not something I would necessarily do to invest in long term, because, ad games are kind of like, unless you figure out the mechanics and the economics behind it, it can be a drain of your wallet. And so I would use it more as a tactic to test if you're trying to reach different demographics. So what you could do is run a paid channel test where, let's say on Instagram, you want to try to like retarget people who have watched your video. The ad manager will allow you to do that, and you can kind of see like what the interest level will be if you just put out something out there without having it be fully fleshed out. And so that allows you to experiment, see the interest level, see how many people sign up, and that can inform you on whether or not you want to proceed. And let's say you don't proceed, you can always message those people individually and let them know, like, right now we're not accepting anyone else, but maybe at a future cohort, we'll let you know. So that just gives you a very easy way to test things without having to take too much risk that way. But so many different other lead strategies. Sarah mentioned a newsletter that is very common for people to set up a kind of like this curated safe space where your members can get value, but also for you're creating a psychological safety net in case like TikTok goes away tomorrow, in case like Twitter like shuts down completely. So that's a good way to still reach your audience despite the platform's risk. Then there's just so many other ways of like continuing to push out like meaningful content, thinking about the landing pages as a way to direct people to that as tests as well.
Nah, that's good. Yo, ladies, this has been an absolutely amazing conversation. Before I pass it around and allow each of you to share your closing words, I have one last question that I want to ask each of you. And it's about one of the most valuable lessons that you've learned when developing and building your own community. So let's start with you, Nicole. What's the biggest lesson that you learned along your journey?
Not being afraid to talk to people, not being afraid to get in the DMs, not being afraid to start the conversation, because not everyone that's interested in like your community is going to like go like, hey, I want to be a part, like I love what you're doing, I want to learn more. So finding those sweet spots, as I say, this is what I teach as well. Find those sweet spots in your stories. That's another gem I'm going to give you guys. And really connect with them. Find some things that you may see. If you're a parent, comment on, something that, okay, my kid is drinking this applesauce, using this applesauce brand as well. It's the small things that will really build that relationship and trust. And if you see the DMs that I have, like, it's more about personal things. And then we start talking about like where you want to see your brand, like where you want to see your content go. So that's one of the challenges I had to make when I first started, because I was like a little like not in the DMs, like just more in the comments. But then when I started going in the DMs, that was like a good, boost in my sales and boost in, my community as well.
Nah, that's good. Sarah, what would you say has been a lesson that you've learned with building your online communities?
Okay, I'm going to be a little controversial for everything that I just said this entire time, because I think that it's really, really important to listen to your audience. But one thing that I had to learn is how to listen to them with a grain of salt, because I think, if you take every single piece of feedback and every single thing that, some people aren't willing to pay for it. Some people are willing to pay for a lot of things. People want this, people want that. I think you can mix your message up and you can really confuse the community if you are not saying, I'm going to take all of this, figure out what the majority is saying, and understand that I'm going to lose people along the way and what you're okay with. So that was our biggest thing, when we switched over from Facebook over to Circle, we were like, okay, we're going to charge this amount. And I had a lot of people who were like, what the hell? Like, we went from a free group and all of a sudden you're charging for it. And like, I'm never giving you money. I can't afford $20 a month. And it's like, okay, like then I have enough content that's free that can fill your cup that way. And so that's something that we had to learn is how do we get that feedback, take it for what it's worth, because it absolutely has value, but still make a business model that allows us to get up in the morning and not resent that stream. And I think that that's really important, is building it in a way that you are excited to come in, you want to continue doing it. And it ties back to those expectations for yourself. And Nicole, I think you said it too, of like, what is your end goal? Like, why are you starting this, right? Are you starting it because everyone and their sister is starting a community? They're trying to be influencers or whatever, and really figuring out like what your bottom line is and why you're doing something, and then allowing everything else to kind of build. Because I definitely started a community at the beginning because everyone else was. I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I think I'm supposed to be doing this.
Yeah, Facebook community. Everyone said you had to have one.
Yep.
Yeah, that's real. And you just really shared a valuable lesson. Another one that I had to learn along my journey, Sarah, is when I'm sure all of you are familiar with like the avatar, and people talk about building an avatar. To me, that's where I found the value in going through that exercise. The most helpful is because it helped me to see who I should take critique from and who I shouldn't because if they're not my avatar, then I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate you for sharing it. But ultimately,
Mhm.
what I'm building and what I'm putting out and what I'm working towards isn't necessarily for you. So your feedback isn't feedback that I'm going to prioritize. I'm not saying that I'm never going to listen to you, but I'm going to have to prioritize the feedback that's coming from the type of people that I want to attract in my community. Like that's who I got to listen to, because I want to make sure I'm delivering what they want. So yeah, that was a gem that you just dropped there, Sarah. And
Yeah,
Teri,
totally.
what have been lessons that you learned along your journey building communities?
So I'd say the number one thing I see for successful creators and coaches and entrepreneurs is always just resilience, which is a little counterintuitive to what I just talked about in terms of experimenting, like failing quickly. But I think the ability to like have mental stamina to keep going in something that you genuinely care about, even when things are hard, even things when are challenging. Nothing goes right when you start a business. There's so many things that either will be bad influences in your life, or, just go wrong, or just don't go as you expect. And that's life. You always have to just push forward, find a different path, try a different thing, but continue moving. I think that is the most important thing that has personally made me successful in starting a company, selling it. Nothing else really stood out. Like, I'm not smarter than everybody else. I'm not like more strategic. That stuff like can add to your path. But I think really what matters at the end of the day is just your ability to like stay in the game, stay focused, like keep going, and take things as they come.
Oh man, that's good. So before we wrap things up, I want to come around and get everybody's last thoughts, and also allow each of you to let everybody watching know where they can get in contact with you. So let's start with you, Nicole. Any last words or any questions you want to ask anybody on the panel, and how can everybody get in touch with you?
I do have a lot of questions for the panel,
Okay.
but I'm not gonna. And this is a great panel, like Sarah and Teri. I'm like, oh, I can learn so much from both of you women.
Likewise.
So I'm definitely going to send you like a DM, so we can definitely connect and do something further. But for all the viewers watching, I also want to thank you as well as Immanuel for allowing me to come on this platform and share my story. And help anyone else that may be in this similar spot, looking to build a community and a personal brand in business online. But if you guys want to follow me at Toldbynik on Instagram, TikTok. Everything is across the board: Twitter, YouTube. You can follow me at Toldbynik. And also just send me a DM. I'm very friendly. I'm very open. Do not be, nervous. I asked Emmanuel, he hopped in the DMs, and I was very friendly, and I was like, yeah, well, let's work. So if you have questions, you want to work with me one-on-one, or if you have a passion for content, you want me to come film your content and make reels for you, girl, I am your girl. So that's where you guys can find me.
I love that. And I'm going to make sure that in the description of this video on YouTube, I'll have the links to all of your, social media, your websites, how people can get in contact with you. And since you did give them permission to DM you, I'm going to give my disclaimer that I always share with the audience. Since you got the green light to get in the DMs, always make sure you go in the DMs with a specific request. Like, always come there with a purpose. Don't just go like, what up? Like, no, it has to be a little bit more, make it worth their time. So that's the one thing that I always like to reiterate, is just make sure you have a purpose, and, you have a point for going in those DMs. So coming over to you, Sarah, any last questions or last words that you like to share before we wrap? And how
Oh my
can
gosh.
everybody get in touch with you?
I can't wait to get coffee with y'all. I'm like so stoked. I too, I feel like I beg people, but I say the same thing. My DMs are always open. Depending on the platform you do DM me on, you might get an automated message from me, but you know what? I will respond after that. I think a lot of people, are afraid sometimes to comment publicly, and you might feel like you have a more specific question. And when I tell y'all, like, I literally map out an hour every single day to respond to DMs, to talk to people. And so you will hear from me. Like, I will respond, and chances are it's going to be a voice note while I'm walking my dog. And oh well, like, you just know Diesel is my main squeeze. Like, he is always next to me. But yeah, you can find me. Personally, I'm at the Sara Loretta on everything: YouTube, Twitter. And then our agency is Systems without an E. So you can find us at Systems Club everywhere else. And yeah, just come hang out. bring your coffee. I just switched to decaf, which I'm not happy about, but it's fine. So we can talk coffee, we can talk plants, whatever. We can talk about processes. Happy to do it.
I love it. Yo, Sarah, you're amazing. So glad to have you back on.
Stop it.
Yo, Teri, any questions, any last thoughts, and definitely let everybody know how they can get in contact with you.
Yeah, absolutely. My last parting thought would be just, I hope that my experience and my story can inspire different women who are pursuing business or like their own startup. Women are so powerful, they're underrepresented. So you can, if you put in the effort, you put in the initiative, be resilient, you can accomplish anything. And show the men up in the industry. So would love more women to do that. For my personal handles, it's on my Instagram. This is actually exactly the predicament I was talking about. My handle is teriyaki chicken, which is not professional at all. I've had multiple publicists for our company tell me to change it, and I refuse to. But yeah, part of my
never change that.
I love that.
That is the perfect handle.
I'm all
Do
like,
not
let me
do
find
it.
her.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that a Japanese restaurant comes to me one day, offers another $1 million to buy it. That would be amazing. I might budge in that case. But yeah, if anyone is looking to start a course or a community, have landing pages, newsletters, any tool that you want to run to start a side hustle, to building a business empire, really just want to put in a small plug for Kajabi, because it has been such an amazing tool for so many different coaches and hosts and creators. And, we are actively working to make the product better every day. And so we're just excited to continue to help the future of work.
Oh man, yo, this has been absolutely amazing. I want to thank each of you ladies again for coming on and being guests on the podcast. Absolutely outstanding. Y'all all drop gems. And I look forward to, having each of you on the podcast again if you're open to it. But I also want to thank our viewers for coming on and joining us today. It's been a great time, and we'll be back with another discussion, I think, 2